So welcome everybody, episode 25 of Amazing Authors. I'm super excited to introduce all of you to Melissa Carro. She wrote the wonderful novel, Mount Moriah's Wake, as I showed you guys previously, Mount Moriah's Wake. I am going to start off this interview with a welcome, and I'm so glad you had this opportunity that we connected. You know, sometimes it's interesting to see when, where, how, who, but yet I got to connect to you today, and I'm really happy to have you. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you. This is exciting. This is fun.
And no, I love these interviews because I love learning about the author as well as their book, and this is going to be a really good one because your book has a lot of meat to it. So without further ado, this is our room where we get to create the magic through inspiration. It is an empty room and a story is always waiting to happen, and you are the author. Everyone who is listening today, you are in fact the author, and you join our circle. So now we become a circle of authors. And today, like I said, I am excited to bring this conversation to life. She's one of the authors in my cohort with She Writes Press, and I'm happy to have gotten to know her over the last, I guess, over 2 years now, because, you know, we both have been published authors since 2021, and it's been an exciting journey for sure. I do want to give you a little intro before we celebrate her important work about Melissa. She's a native Southerner, has over 20 years of experience in marketing and communications, including her own business, Norton Carro Communications. She's edited textbooks and been a nonfiction ghostwriter, as well as a regular copy editor for Gannett Publishing. She received her Bachelor of Arts with honors from Vanderbilt University. So all you Vandies out there, we have a couple in my family. She currently works there as well, so even more exciting. Carro was a closet fiction writer for years while raising her 3 daughters, and Mount Moriah's Wake is your first novel. She writes a weekly blog in the middle about life in the sandwich generation, and is currently working on another novel, and that's called In the DEW of Little Things, soon to be when. We'll see. Two-thirds of it's done, so that's exciting. You're moving along, which is definitely an awesome progression of things for sure. And if you want to catch her, she has her webpage at Melissa Carro, MELISSACARRO.com. So without further ado, welcome, Melissa. Good afternoon. I'm so excited to have you. Yet another amazing author to my show, 25 in. I am so honored for you to join me today. Thank you for joining.
This is awesome.
Well, you know,
and
cover, I want to point it out before I go into the synopsis of the book, and if you can move over a little bit so we can all see it, or I can actually hold it up as well. It is a beautiful, beautiful image of this house, this kind of wonderful, you know, definitely Southern in nature home. And this is the invitation for everyone to open the pages. And the reader's favorite 5-star review at the top is Mount Moriah's Wake is phenomenal. There are no other words to describe such a rich and well-crafted story. So I like to start with high expectations. Certainly that will leave it up here for all of us before I go ahead and read the summary of your novel and let you expand subsequent to that. Okay. Do you have anything to add at this point before I go on?
No. Oh, go on. Let's hear.
Okay. Hey, everybody. You guys ready? Forward Clarion Review says, Mount Moriah's Wake is an eloquent novel in which a woman is a spiritual homecoming and embraces love, which is always a good thing. Orphaned at 8, Joanne Wilson, who is your protagonist, was raised by her eccentric aunt in the bucolic southern community of Mount Moriah. Now a 26-year-old would-be writer, Joanna faces several crossroads in her marriage, in her career, and in her faith. She left home for Chicago in 1997, immediately following the murder, intrigue, of her best friend, Grace. Gotta love the names. Now she comes back to Mount Moriah for the first time in 4 years to attend her aunt's funeral, and realizes she must confront both the profound sorrow she feels over Grace's death and the mysterious guilt she carries. She must finally grieve. A hauntingly sweet story of love lost that alternates between Joanna's childhood in Mount Moriah, her life in Chicago, and her present encounters upon returning home. It ponders deep questions. When we experience unspeakable tragedy, do we see ourselves as victims or survivors? I think everybody can really contemplate that as well. Is it possible to regain happiness in the face of such, and how do we find our faith again once it's lost? So here we are.
Here we are. You said that you're almost finished with it, right?
Yes. So I am pretty much two-thirds done, I think. I have been, it's interesting because I try to focus, and it's like, all over the place. As authors, we all know everything's pulling at us as far as our own marketing skills and wonderful things we bring to the table. And wow, let me tell you, I am in it, but go ahead. I don't like to tell anybody else what the story is, but you and I have something in common. We like to go to the end of the book before we start reading it. I know that might get a lot of hate, a little hate out there.
I know hate. I read the last 4 pages of every book first.
Now tell me why you do that, because I do it because I want to know that I'm investing my time into something good.
For different reason. I do it because I've done that since I was a little girl. And I remember my mother telling me, why on earth are you doing that? But I like to see how an author gets to the ending. To me, it's the whole process that the author goes through. And if you know how it ends, then you can kind of see the clues along the way. And there are many, many plot twists and mysteries that have been ruined for me, but it doesn't ruin it for me. I just, that's part of it for me. So every single book, last 4 pages, that's what I do.
Finally happy to find a kindred heart in that respect. I like literally the blasphemy that comes in the eyes, like, oh, how could you, oh my God. No, I think it for me is I want to know that there's hope at the end. And I think that just comes from the fact that your life experience is into everything that you read too, which gets me back to why I love the show so much. It's about the amazing author, and that amazing author is you. So why, here we go, why did you decide to write in the first place? And interestingly enough, tell us when it began.
Well, it began, this book actually took me 25 years to write. So, and there was the whole process is probably not like you would imagine most writers do, as far as I didn't sit down and write an outline and go forward. The first few lines of the book I wrote when I was 14. So truly this was a lifetime journey. And how it came about is one day I was going on a walk and I had this experience, and I came back home and I wrote down what is the epilogue. And I didn't know it was the epilogue, and I thought, hey, this might be the beginning of a book. And so I won't tell you what happens in the epilogue. Well, because you read it. Probably. So I came back and had all these thoughts and feelings to what I'd experienced on this walk. And so I wrote it down, but I didn't know what to do with it. So I put it in my desk drawer and moved on. And a few years later, we were packing up to move, and I was going through lots of old writings and boxes. And I found this essay I wrote about my grandfather when he was, the year after he passed away. We were cleaning out his house. And it really was not so much about my grandfather as about his place, because he lived on a lot of property, had built this big Southern colonial house. And there were stone pillars at the base of his driveway, long winding driveway. So if you've read Mount Moriah, you know that his house was the inspiration for the inn at Mount Moriah. But I was reading this essay about him, and the opening lines were, "For every person there is a place, a magical place, magical if only because it is yours." And so this essay wasn't as much about him as about this place that was just so part of my life. And so I took that and I played with it, but again, I didn't know what to do with it. And so I put that page into my desk drawer and moved on. And a few years later, I was having a reunion with a college friend, and we had met in between our two towns. And we told stories and reminisced. And one story we told was about a very traumatic event that had happened in college. Right. And it was amazing how vivid our memories were and how that had stayed with us. And so I was driving back home, and I sat down and I wrote a few paragraphs description of the event, and they were kind of dark and creepy. And again, I didn't know what to do with it. So I put it in my desk drawer and I moved on. And, by this point, my desk drawer was just sinking, because I had all these scenes and vignettes and little snippets and descriptions in there, but I didn't know what they were. And I was writing all the time. I was doing freelance. I was ghostwriting. I was writing for my job, but I really, really wanted to write a novel, and always have, and just didn't know what it should be about. And then one day I was having lunch with a colleague, and he had just come home from burying his mother, and he had to go back to his hometown. And I could tell that the grief, the sorrow that he was experiencing wasn't just from losing his mom. It was having to go back home and having to face some demons from his adolescence and having to go back to that small town that he grew up in. And he said to me, I swore I would never go back, but a plane ride later, there I was.
Wow.
And that is on the first page of Mount Moriah's Wake. And so it's like all of a sudden, I kept thinking about that and thinking about that. And about a week later, I pulled out my desk drawer and emptied out all these vignettes and found the essay from my grandfather. And all of a sudden, it's like the door opened and Joanna walked in, and she was real. And I realized that it was her story, and I realized why she didn't want to go home. And I realized, what her journey was. So the characters became real to me. And so I started piecing together all these different parts written from so many decades of my life.
That's amazing. First of all, I love your first line. And you said that you wrote it initially when you were 14 years old. Mm-hmm. I mean, it followed you. I think it sounds to me like, there's a mantra that I love in my life: magical work for magical play, magical people in my life every day. And so basically, I bring that through. This sounds like something would be your mantra for a bit. Yeah. Place magic if only because it's yours. It's beautiful. We have Tabitha writes books on here. Tabitha is awesome. She's a publisher too. And she must see a lot of stories like this too. All these, and I love the fact that you are a magical person too. But coming back to the point of, starting your journey. Now this book, and it is 2021, Mount Moriah's Wake. And how has your publishing journey been so far?
It's been a wild ride. It's been interesting. I've learned a lot because I think that all my life, I wanted to write a book. I wanted to publish a book. But I think that I felt like the work of writing the book was the hard part. But not. And I also back in my mind, I had, these visions of, from Little Women, of Jo March going, through the snow with her pieces of paper to the publisher, or John Boy Walton going to New York with his, and it is not like that. It is a business, and it is difficult. And, it's the self-promotion, I think, that is the hard, and the marketing and the amount of money that it takes really to successfully market your book. And that it really is up to you to do that. So that's been the most surprising thing for me.
Well, obviously, how long did it take you to write? It's been 25 years. It came 25 years to fruition, which is definitely indication that you have a persevering, character for sure. That but from the beginning of the journey, I don't know if you want to say from the beginning, 14 years, or even from 2021 when you published it. Like, tell me what was a highlight between that and now.
I think one of the highlights. Well, there are a couple of little things. One is that. This woman called my brother, and she said, I have to tell you, and I don't know this woman at all, and she lives in a different city, but she called him and she said, I have to tell you something. I bought the book, your sister's book, and I gave it to my 96-year-old mother.
Wow.
She reads, she's in assisted living, she's all alone, but she reads, and she said, she loved it, and it meant a lot to her, and it reminded her of her childhood. And she said, thank your sister for giving her a couple of days of joy. So I think that meant a lot to me. Going to the Boston Book Fest was so exciting and interesting because, and the Southern Festival of Books, actually getting to tell people about the book and look at the book and scan and think, I wonder if I would be interested in this. And that's really interesting to get to meet the right readers.
Isn't that interesting? Can you tell a reader who comes up to you at a book fair whether or not they're going to be interested in your book by virtue of, how they present, or perhaps, their questions around, what's this about, their inquisition or curiosity? Can you see that?
No, sometimes they surprise you. Sometimes it surprises you. So I don't think you can always predict. But I know that one big piece of the book is that there are a lot of plot twists. And I let people know, if you if you like a strong female protagonist and women's fiction, and you like plot twists and to not really know what's going on till the end, then this book is for you. And so, you know, I've had people that say, oh, I only read mysteries, or I only read this or that. And they've liked it because of that, because it's kind of
that sounds like an elevator pitch for me. You know, again, if you like this, that's a great, you know, starting, because it engages the person where they are and whatever they are like looking for. I like that. Yeah. I like the. Yeah, that's definitely something that would engage, especially if you like mysteries, especially for. Well,
it's go ahead. Loosely set in Mont Eagle, on Mont Eagle Mountain, which is between Nashville and Atlanta. That is a real place. Mount Moriah is fictional, but it is loosely based on that. And so people from the South, I think that resonates with them. And, you know, I ask people the question of, can you ever really go home again? Yeah. You know, is home going to be the way you left it? And does home ever leave you? You know, or does it stay with you? So I think that feeling of, I think it reminds people of home, and it reminds people of their journeys and their adolescence, and maybe things that they've tried to step away from, but rather than embrace and see where their journey takes them.
The T.S. Eliot quote where it says, you know, coming back to the beginning, knowing that place for the first time. I certainly cut it short, but it's kind of that when you go home, it's like seeing through the different eyes because of all the experiences you've had. And certainly with this particular book, when Joanna came back, and they'll clearly read more, you know, she had to deal with a lot of unresolved, which is always the unresolved issues of life, right? As we are all unresolved until our last day we take our breath. But, you know, interesting enough, you bring in a faith component here, and I enjoy that. That is because, as a nonfiction, mostly my writing is, I always look for the spiritual component with a lot of books, because I'm always a seeker with regard to that, what's going to elevate me. Tell me a little bit about how that plays a role in your writing and in your journey, for that matter.
Well, I think that I have always been fascinated by the fact that people seem to either see themselves as victims or survivors, right? And that, you know, where does happiness come from? Happiness really comes from being able to accept your lot in life, find happiness in what you have. And, you know, if tragedy has struck you, you know, can you pull yourself out of that? And I guess to me, that is faith. To me is faith and hope lie in being able to be grateful and to embrace what's good in life, and not fixate on what's wrong and what's bad, which is, you know, I've been told that Joanna is a very annoying character. I have been told by people that they're like, I could not stand her, but then by the end of the book, I think maybe you change your mind about her, but she is on a journey, and she is she's negative. She's been through a lot. She suffered a lot of trauma, and she can't see her way to embracing the good.
Oh my God, that's so, you know, it's interesting. I said, when people annoy you, it's because you see more in them than you actually acknowledge. It's like a mirror, like, oh, because it's what bothers in yourself, for sure. You know, I want to ask you with regard to 3 takeaways as to the writing journey that you, about the launch, the writing, or even thinking about writing a book. Tell me 3 things that you can offer as far as wisdom is to anyone out there who might be interested in doing that for themselves.
I think that there's no right process. It's whatever works for you. I mean, obviously this was a very unusual, I wrote the book because it's written in snippets and vignettes. And, you know, interestingly, it's like, as Joanna grew up, I grew up, you know, because there's Joanna in the book that was written when I was in my early 20s. And so I think the takeaways are to discipline yourself in whatever way you can, and don't put such pressure on yourself. Right now, I'm working on my second one, but I have a really demanding job. I actually just took on a bigger role. And so it became even more demanding. And so all I can do is 1,200 words a weekend. And that's what I'm disciplining myself to do. So that book is being written 1,200 words at a time.
It's a novel,
And
right? It's a novel.
Fiction, and it's also women's fiction as well. And, you know, that's all I can do is what I can do. So I think that, and I think that if you kind of give yourself the grace to let it happen as it happens. And, you know, there's some weekends, last weekend, I spent my whole weekend in the yard planting, and that's just what I needed to be doing. And I didn't write a single word, and that was okay. And I think another takeaway is to try different venues, like the blog that I do, and I publish it twice a month, is in the middle, and it's about life in the sandwich generation and being a woman of middle age who is trying to take care of parents and trying to raise children and trying to work, and friends are dying and parents are dying, and you know, there's financial pressures, and there's all these things in our life. And so that was very cathartic to me. I actually started writing that the year my mother died, as a sort of as a way of grieving and working through that. So you know, there may be a weekend that I don't write on my new book, but I write a blog. So I'm trying to give myself the grace and not put too much pressure.
I like how you refer to the blog, because I think it does fuel the writing fire, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's something to move you forward with regards to any stories that you tell. We're always telling stories. Every time we open our mouth, we're telling a story. You know, hopefully
Right.
it has a lot of truth or veracity to it, you know, especially if you don't want to lie to your friends. But the bottom line, but novel writing gives you the opportunity to tell a story that might be from your imagination, but there's always that kernel of truth to it. And I'd like to ask you, you know, is there a little bit of, you said Joanne sauntered into your life and never like you, right, Joanne? So is there something about her that you see yourself in that?
Well, I think the fact that she is a frustrated writer and always wanted to be a writer, and, you know, sort of has that imposter syndrome that, am I ever going to be good enough? Am I ever going to be able to write enough? Obviously, you know, there's things from my life that I directly put into the book. So, you know, I guess she is a lot like me in being a writer. And, you know, her faith journey. I mean, I have lost my faith. I found it again. So I think there's a lot of that. And of course, she's a Southern woman. And I, in all of my fiction writing, I hope to portray Southern women not as barefoot and uneducated and poor. You know, Southern women are still magnolias, right? And so, so hopefully my protagonist will always be strong-willed women like that.
That's awesome. And here, LA Betty 4519 is saying, love Moriah is awake. I can't wait for your next book. So I'm curious with regard to the process, and you're involved, you know, 1,200 words, as much as you can. I'm really curious to know which characters are sauntering into your life right now? Are there a name of a lead character that we can all kind of get excited by being introduced for the first time here?
The new book it's very different, and it's more difficult for me because it's written in third person, not first person, and about 4 women. So they are all equal protagonists. They are all friends. When the book opens, you know that they have received the news that something has happened to the 4th woman, that she is gone, but you don't know which of the women is gone. And so then it starts telling their story, and the whole point of the book is to figure out what happened to the 4th, which one is gone. And they are all women that are in their 40s, and they're going through caring for elderly parents, recovering from cancer, dealing with teenagers, dealing with children, financial issues, infidelity, marital problems. And so they're dealing with all the things that we as women deal with. And so
you don't leave it.
So
out. You throw it on. That's great. And Donna's saying that love the idea of a faith journey. I love the fact that you have pretty much tackled every single issue a let's say middle-aged woman you have faced or will face. And I love the circle of the friendship. I think that that is so important, especially for women's fiction. I like to see how the relationships are developed. So I can't wait to read your next book. And hi, Carmen, welcome. And this is, once again, Melissa Carro, and this is her book, Mount Moriah's Wake. We were a little bit discussing her new novel, which would be 2/3 done, and waiting for it to culminate to an actual in my hands kind of book. So this is very exciting. You know, it does sound like you love the mystery too, which, you know, is something that sounds like it fuels your soul as well. You know, I wanted to congratulate you, obviously, about writing your story, and would love to ask, where can people find your book, Mount Moriah's Wake? So if they want to get their hands on it, they can grab a copy and read it for themselves, and leave a review, especially if you loved it.
It is on Amazon, and it's in any independent bookstore anywhere in the U.S. So please copy and review it.
There's a question I have to ask you, because I always like to leave something with them so they can associate it with you. What do you want to be known for?
You know, you mean in my life or for writing or?
In anything. What comes to mind when I ask you the question first and foremost? What is it that you want to leave for your legacy?
You know, I think my children, my 3 daughters, are my legacy, definitely. But I would love to leave the legacy of telling stories that make people think and that people see themselves in. That's important to me. So, yeah, I have many more stories I want to tell. The next one I want to start with is historical fiction. So that's going to be kind of different for me. But,
so where are you going to be traveling for that one? I always say historical fiction always connotates that you have to do some research and maybe you travel to the place, or even
out the Spanish Civil War.
Oh, wow.
My husband's family is all from Madrid, and his mother was sent away during the Spanish Civil War, and so it's kind of a story about their lives. And so
you know, there's always that component where whatever I do, I want to learn something new about myself or other people or the human, you know, the condition that we all get to experience as long as we're alive. So, you know, I want to congratulate you once again. And what would be your greatest wish?
My greatest wish, I think my greatest wish would be to be content with myself and what I've done. Because I, as my daughter told me the other day, I have a productivity problem. I need to be producing and doing more, and I need to find that ability to just be at rest and give myself the grace to go dig in the dirt if I need to. So
beautiful wish. I actually am going to share that with you, because I think it's really important. And also, you know, to acknowledge other authors, other professionals in the room, saying that, you know, I'm really proud of the fact that you persevered after 25 years, you know, to get a book out there, and you're going and you're going and you're still doing, but that you take the moments to actually acknowledge the celebration, and that you've accomplished something pretty amazing with Mount Moriah's Wake, and now soon to be your second one. But actually, you know, being proud of yourself, because if anything, you know, the way we live our lives, and I do know this to be true, our children are watching us. And I love that you said that your greatest legacy is your children, your 3 daughters, and they get to have this piece of art, which it is, to hold and to have forever. It's a piece of who you are. And it's just, they get to have it for their own families, you know, for certain. So let's see here. As the past and present worlds collide, Joanne grapples with the questions, and the journey moves toward an unexpected conclusion. Such is life of the hero's journey, for sure. And the mystery and surprise. What would you like to leave us all with today?
Well, I love talking to book clubs. So if anybody has a book club, I'm I'd love to join by Zoom or, I don't know, maybe driving distance, or I did a lot of that last summer and just love to hear people's perspectives. And I think that that's really important for us as writers to get people's take and their questions. And sometimes people bring to me things that I never would have thought of. So I just, I think reading is something that's to be shared. And it really is kind of a group activity. Because no book affects two people the same way.
So melissacarro.com, melissacarro.com. She's on IG Live. She's on IG Live right now, but she is also on IG, and you go ahead and tell everyone your handle so they can know that as well.
Melissa Norton Carro.
Melissa Norton, Norton, Carro. Anyone on YouTube also is going to be watching this afterward. Check it out. Go to her IG and follow her. And obviously, if you have any interest with regard to book clubs, she clearly has wonderful stories to tell, and I'm sure that will bring your book life or your book club to life. And this is definitely a great book to talk to because, like she said, there are so many different really juicy tidbits and mystery and all sorts of, intrigue as well, and it all comes down to how people process life. And I love the fact that, this is something that you have completed and you should be really, really proud of it as well. So I love the Southerner aspect as well. So, she says Zoom's a great opportunity, but if you are in the South and around the Tennessee area, and you want her to come, she said she travels. So there's that too.
I would love to.
That's great. So I want to thank you all for joining us today. Thank you so much, Melissa, for sharing your story, sharing your book, and also getting us all excited about things to come for you. And I love the wish to sit in gratitude and just be really content as a human being rather than a human doing, which sounds like that we all have that particular. And if there's anyone out there who wants to contact her, she is definitely open and willing to just message her to the like. So like I said, this is a room of amazing authors, and we did have the pleasure of having Melissa here today. Thank you so much. Reach out to her, and I will see you next time. Thanks so much again, Melissa.
Thank you. Thank you, Meg.
Thank you.
Bye.